She did not cry when he betrayed her. That was the memory Ethan Vale could never escape. Not the sound of glass breaking, not the shocked silence of the guests, not even the ring that rolled across the polished floor after she slipped it off her finger. No. What followed him for 6 long years was the way Elena Hart stood under the chandelier light, one hand resting on the small curve of her stomach, looking at him as if the world had ended quietly inside her. No scream, no scene, no desperate defense, only a terrible stillness. And in that stillness, he destroyed everything. The ballroom of the Vale estate had been glowing that night. Crystal lights spilled gold across marble floors. Servers moved with silver trays. Investors, politicians, family friends, and business allies filled the room, all gathered to celebrate Ethan's company, closing the largest international merger in its history. The newspapers would call it the deal of the year. It should have been a perfect night. Instead, it became the night that ruined 3 lives before they had even fully begun. Because an hour before the celebration, a file had been delivered to Ethan's private office. Inside it were photographs, a hotel key card receipt, copies of private bank transfers, a message thread printed in black ink, and one unsigned letter claiming Elena had been unfaithful for months and had been planning to leave Ethan after taking money from his family accounts. The evidence looked clean, organized, cold, convincing. Too convincing. But Ethan had not been in a state to question it. He had been exhausted, proud, already pressured by his father, and quietly insecure in ways no one would have imagined. He had built an empire from discipline and force. He knew how to overpower markets, rivals, board members, and threats. But love had always been the one thing that made him feel defenseless, and Elena was the only person he had ever loved enough to fear losing. So when the file arrived, something dark inside him leapt forward. Because betrayal hurts most when it touches the place you protect most fiercely. And there had been one more thing. The file had been delivered by Vanessa Reed, elegant, controlled, intelligent Vanessa Reed, his father's favorite choice for him, the daughter of a longtime business ally, the woman many believed would have been a more suitable wife for a man like Ethan Vale. Vanessa had entered his office with calm eyes and the soft expression of someone carrying bad news she wished were not true. "I'm sorry," she had said. "I thought you should know before tonight begins." That was all. She did not need to say more, because Ethan believed her. And when he walked into the ballroom later, dressed in black, carrying that file in one hand and fury in the other, he was already a man moving toward destruction. "Elena," he said. His voice cut through the room. The music slowed, then stopped. Conversations died. Elena turned from the guests she had been greeting. She wore a pale silver gown. Her dark hair fell softly over one shoulder. She looked calm, warm, beautiful, completely unaware that the ground beneath her was about to vanish. She smiled at first. Then she saw his face, and the smile disappeared. "What is it?" she asked. Ethan walked toward her until he stood at the center of the ballroom, where everyone could see them. He held out the papers. "Sign these." She frowned. "What are they?" "The divorce papers." The room seemed to inhale and forget how to breathe. Elena stared at him. "What?" "You heard me." A low murmur spread across the crowd. Ethan's father, Richard Vale, stood near the back of the room, expression unreadable. Vanessa remained just behind him, hands lightly folded, wearing concern like perfume. Elena did not take the papers. "Ethan," she said quietly, "what are you talking about?" He dropped the file on the nearest table. The photographs slid out, copies scattered. Guests leaned in without meaning to. "I'm talking about your lies," he said. "Your affair, your stolen money, your plan to leave me." Her face drained of color. Then she reached for the photographs, looking through them with growing confusion. "This isn't real. Stop lying to me." "I'm not lying." "You expect me to believe all of this is fake?" "Yes," she said, her voice breaking for the first time. "Because it is." Vanessa stepped forward, as if reluctantly. "Maybe this should be private," she offered gently. But Ethan was too enraged to hear caution. "No," he said, "I'm done protecting her." Elena looked from Ethan to Vanessa. Something changed in her eyes. She understood. Not every detail, not yet, but enough. "You," she whispered to Vanessa. Vanessa held her gaze without blinking. Ethan misunderstood the look. "You don't get to turn this around," he snapped. Then he said the words that would poison the next 6 years of his life. "While carrying my child, you were planning to run away with another man." The room froze completely. A few guests exchanged stunned glances. Only a handful of people had known Elena was pregnant. The pregnancy was still early, fragile, and they had waited to announce it. Now it was hanging in the air like a public wound. Elena put one hand over her stomach. "I never betrayed you," she said. "Not once." He laughed bitterly. "Then what is all this?" "I don't know," she whispered, "but I know this. I would never do this to you." And for one brief second, something in Ethan hesitated, because she was not a good liar. He had always known that. When she was happy, it showed. When she was hurt, it showed. When she loved him, the whole room used to feel it, but rage is often just wounded pride wearing armor. And Vanessa had prepared her trap well. Ethan hardened himself. "Sign the papers," he said, "and leave my house." His father said nothing. No one defended her. The people who had smiled at her moments earlier now looked away, careful not to get caught in a family storm. Elena stood very still. Then she bent slowly, picked up the pen lying beside the papers, and read the first page. Her eyes moved across the words as if they belonged to another woman's life. A clean separation, immediate departure, no claim to the estate, no future rights. And below it a line about preserving the reputation of the family through mutual silence. Mutual silence. The cruelty of that almost made her laugh. She had loved Ethan through his hardest years. She had stood beside him when his company was unstable, when investors questioned him, when his father undermined him at every opportunity. She had known the boy under the armor before the world had fully turned him into the man he now was. And now he wanted silence. Her chest tightened so hard she thought she might collapse. Instead, she signed. One signature, clean, steady. Then she slipped off her wedding ring and placed it on top of the papers. She looked directly at Ethan, and when she spoke, her voice was low enough that the room leaned forward to hear. "I hope the truth finds you one day," she said, "and when it does, I hope it hurts." Then she turned and walked away. No one stopped her. Not the board members she had defended him in front of. Not the staff who had seen her kindness, not his father, and not Ethan. That was the first betrayal, the public one, the clean, visible one, the betrayal everyone saw. The second betrayal came later that night, and only Elena survived to remember it. Rain was falling hard by the time she stepped beyond the main gates of the estate. Cold rain, sharp rain, rain that soaked silk and skin and memory in less than a minute. She had one small suitcase, her phone, her wallet, a coat she had barely remembered to grab. That was all. Behind her, the Vale mansion glowed warm and golden against the darkness, as if nothing sacred had just been broken inside it. She stood under the iron gates for a long time, not moving, one hand pressed to her lower stomach. The baby. No. Baby, she corrected herself, her child. Whatever happened now, the child inside her no longer belonged to a future she had imagined with Ethan. She pulled out her phone and called him once, no answer, twice, still nothing. The third time, the call was rejected after one ring. Her hand trembled. Then she typed the only message she could bear to send. I did not betray you. Please do not let our child suffer for your mistake. She stared at the screen after sending it. The message showed delivered, not read. Then headlights cut through the rain. A black car rolled to a stop beside the curb. The rear door opened. Vanessa stepped out in heels, too expensive for weather like this. She was carrying an umbrella, but she did not offer it. Elena looked at her with quiet horror. You did this. Vanessa's lips curved. I warned him because someone had to. You forged everything. Vanessa tilted her head. Does it matter now? Elena felt nausea rise. Why? Vanessa stepped closer, rain sliding off the black silk of her coat. Because he was never meant to stay with someone like you. What does that mean? It means you were temporary, sweet, convenient, emotional. But men like Ethan outgrow women like you. They need someone who understands power. Elena laughed once, breathless with disbelief. You destroyed a family for ambition. Vanessa's face remained smooth. No, I removed an obstacle. Then her eyes dropped to Elena's stomach. You should leave the city, she said. If you stay, things may become more difficult than tonight. Elena went cold. That's a threat. That's advice. Vanessa paused, then smiled slightly. If you are smart, you'll disappear before Ethan realizes how completely he has chosen the wrong side. She returned to the car and shut the door. Within seconds, the taillights vanished into the rain. Elena remained frozen on the sidewalk. Her whole body was shaking now, not just from the cold. For a terrible moment, she considered turning back, marching into the mansion, demanding a private confrontation, forcing Ethan to look at her long enough to see what he had done. But some truths become clear too late, and some doors, once closed by pride and public humiliation, cannot be reopened by pleading. So Elena made a choice. She would not beg to remain where she had been so easily discarded. She would not raise her child in the shadow of lies. She would disappear. Before sunrise, she was gone. She bought a train ticket under her maiden name and took only what she could carry. The city fell away behind her in wet gray layers. She did not look back. By evening, she arrived in a small coastal town called Seabrook, nearly 6 hours from the capital. It was the kind of place powerful men never noticed. Quiet streets, salt air, weathered buildings, a harbor full of old fishing boats, a single main road with a bakery, a grocery, a pharmacy, a bookstore, and a clinic. There, above a little bakery near the shoreline, Elena found a room to rent. The bakery belonged to a widow named Mara Doyle, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pinned tightly back and kind eyes sharpened by grief. She had buried a husband, raised 2 sons, and outlived most illusions. She looked Elena over once, The soaked suitcase, the exhausted face, the hand that kept drifting protectively to her stomach, and asked only one question. "Are you running from danger or from shame?" Elena hesitated. "Both." Mara nodded as if that made perfect sense. "You can have the room upstairs. Rent later, when breathing becomes easier." That was how Elena began again. The room was small, with one bed, a narrow dresser, a lamp that flickered when the weather turned, and a single window overlooking the sea. At night, the sound of waves filled the silence. It was lonely, but it was steady, and after the violence of what had happened, steady felt holy. She worked mornings in the bakery, kneading dough, wrapping loaves, cleaning counters, serving tea to fishermen and school teachers and old women who came mostly to talk. In the afternoons, she stitched clothing for extra cash and helped Mara keep the books. She slept badly, ate little, carried her heartbreak like fever. Still, the town did not pry. The people there had their own losses. That mercy saved her. At 11 weeks, she went to the clinic for her first proper scan since leaving the city. The doctor, a warm woman named Dr. Ellis, moved the wand gently across Elena's stomach, studying the screen with professional focus. Then her face changed. Elena's pulse jumped. "What is it?" Dr. Ellis smiled. "Well," she said softly, "you're going to need more than one crib." Elena blinked. "I'm sorry." The doctor turned the monitor slightly. "There are 2 heartbeats." Elena stared at the screen. 2, not 1. 2 tiny flickering lives side by side, both impossibly alive. Her breath caught so sharply it hurt. "Twins?" Dr. Ellis nodded. "Yes, healthy so far. Small, but healthy." Elena looked at the screen and began to cry. Not loud tears, not dramatic ones. Just a quiet breaking open. Because until that moment, she had been surviving in fragments. One step one morning, 1 hour at a time. But now there were 2 children. 2 lives depending entirely on her. 2 reasons she could never afford to collapse. That night, she lay awake in her little room over the bakery, one hand over her stomach, listening to the sea. "I will protect you," she whispered into the darkness. "Both of you, I promise." And from that moment on, she lived like a woman keeping a vow. Pregnancy was not easy. There were weeks when Elena was too sick to stand through a morning shift. Weeks when her ankles swelled, her back burned, and fear kept her awake more effectively than coffee. Money was always tight. The room was always too small. The future was always uncertain. But she was no longer alone. Mara became more than a landlord. She became witness, nurse, cook, and something dangerously close to family. She brought Elena soup when nausea made everything else impossible. She scolded her when she skipped meals. She stitched baby blankets from leftover cloth and pretended it was nothing. When winter arrived, Elena's hands were rough from work, her body heavy with late pregnancy, and her heart more guarded than ever. She had heard nothing from Ethan. No message, no apology, no search that she knew of. At times, she told herself that was a mercy. At other times, it felt like a second abandonment. The twins came early. A storm had rolled in from the sea that night, violent and relentless. The wind shook the windows of the bakery. Elena had been helping Mara count receipts in the downstairs office when the first contraction hit, hard enough to make her grip the edge of the desk. Mara looked up once and said, "That was not indigestion." The next contraction left no doubt. The town clinic stabilized her, but because the babies were early, an ambulance rushed her to a larger hospital 40 minutes inland. Rain lashed the roads the whole way. Labor lasted 15 hours. Long hours of pain, fear, exhaustion, and prayer. At dawn, the first cry came. A girl, tiny, furious, alive. 3 minutes later came the second. A boy. Weaker at first, then louder, as if he had remembered at the last second that he intended to stay in this world too. Elena held them one after the other, sobbing with relief. A daughter with dark eyes and a fierce little jaw. A son with Ethan's mouth and her stubborn grip. She named them Lila and Leo. Lila because the sound felt like light. Leo because it meant lion. And he had arrived fighting. They were small enough that terror never fully left her for the first few months. Lila struggled with her breathing at first. Leo had trouble feeding. Sleep became a memory rather than a habit. Bills piled up. Elena worked whenever she could, even doing bookkeeping from her bed, while the twins napped beside her. She learned the rhythm of survival. Wash bottles, count coins, soothe one baby while rocking the other, sleep in 90-minute pieces, wake, repeat, endure. Some nights, after both babies had finally fallen asleep, she would sit in the dark beside their bassinets and stare at them with a love so overwhelming it frightened her. How could something so beautiful exist in a world that had already shown itself capable of such cruelty? Then Lila would make a soft sound in her sleep. Or Leo would curl his tiny fingers around hers, and Elena would remember. Because love did not ask the world for permission. It simply continued. Back in the city, Ethan tried to erase the wound he had created. At first, it seemed possible. Business expanded. His company entered new markets. Industry magazines praised his strategy. Investors admired his discipline. His father's approval, once difficult to win, now came more freely. Vanessa remained close, always useful, always elegant, always somehow present when decisions were being made. But peace never arrived. Instead, there was a silence in his home that felt wrong. Elena had never been loud, but she had changed spaces by entering them. She had left books open in the library, fresh flowers in rooms no one else thought to soften, warm arguments in the kitchen at midnight, music on Sunday mornings, laughter in places where Ethan had once only known tension. Without her, the house became efficient, perfect, dead. 3 months after the divorce, Ethan found her final message while clearing old files from his phone. "I did not betray you. Please do not let our child suffer for your mistake." He read it once, then again. Something in him shifted. He called her number immediately, disconnected. He sent a message, no response. He had his assistant locate the apartment she had once kept in the city before marriage. Empty. He checked the private clinic records under her married name. Nothing recent. He questioned the driver who had dropped her at charity events, the house manager, the staff. No one knew where she had gone. He told himself it did not matter. Then a week later, he ordered the evidence file reopened. He claimed it was for legal finality. In truth, he wanted reassurance. He did not get it. The hotel receipt had metadata that did not match the claimed date. One bank transfer had been routed through an account already frozen months before the transfer supposedly happened. A photo contained lighting inconsistencies obvious to a real analyst. The message printouts were stitched together from separate conversations. Fake, every piece of it. Cleanly manufactured, thoroughly planted, designed to hold up under emotional stress, not forensic review. Ethan sat in his office for a long time after hearing the report. The city beyond the windows blurred into pale afternoon light. He could not breathe properly. He called Vanessa in. When she arrived, she looked composed, perhaps expecting another meeting, another quiet advantage. Instead, Ethan closed the office door and placed the corrected report on the desk. Explain. She read the first page, then the second, then looked up. For 1 second, surprise cracked her expression. Then she smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. So, she said softly, you finally looked. Ethan felt something feral move beneath his skin. You forged everything. She tilted her head. I arranged clarity. She was innocent. Vanessa stood very still. You don't know that. Yes, I do. And now? Vanessa asked. What difference does it make now? He slammed his hand flat against the desk so hard the penholder rattled. She was pregnant. Vanessa's gaze did not soften. Then maybe she should have fought harder. Those words almost made him break. Instead, he went cold. Get out. She laughed once. You think throwing me out fixes this? Get out. By nightfall, Vanessa was removed from the company, barred from key accounts, and cut off from access to family property. But that was only the beginning. Ethan opened private investigations into financial misconduct, forged reporting, and criminal manipulation tied to her network. Still, punishment gave him nothing, because it did not tell him where Elena was, and it did not tell him whether the child had survived. So he searched. Not publicly, never publicly. Pride still poisoned him in those days. But he searched in every quiet way a powerful man can. He hired private investigators across 3 states. He had transport records reviewed, hospital systems checked, property rentals flagged, financial activity traced under both her married name and maiden name. Nothing. She had vanished cleanly, as if she had stepped off the map. Months became a year. A year became 2. Twice Ethan believed he had a lead, and twice it dissolved. Once he flew across the country for a woman who looked like her from behind in a railway station, only to realize when she turned that he had become the kind of man haunted by strangers. Eventually, even his most trusted investigator said what Ethan already feared. If she wanted to be found, she would have left a thread. She didn't. He was right. And that truth was almost unbearable, because it meant Elena had not simply been lost. She had chosen a world that did not include him. Seabrook changed with the years. Winters roughened the harbor, summers brought tourists and noise and children chasing gulls along the waterfront. The bakery grew busier. The bookstore cafe next door changed owners. Mara's knees grew weaker, but her voice never did. And in the small room above the bakery, then later in the modest 2-bedroom flat behind it, Elena built a life. Not an easy life. A real one. Lila and Leo grew with startling speed, as children always do. Lila was observant from the beginning. She noticed everything. Voices, moods, weather shifts. Who was lying, who was tired. Which adult was pretending to be fine. She loved drawing, books, stars, and patterns. She had Elena's steady eyes, and when angry, her father's unforgiving silence. Leo came into the world softer, but became bolder with every year. Curious, impulsive, deeply affectionate, he loved boats, stories, and taking things apart to see how they worked. He was the kind of child who asked difficult questions without understanding that adults often survive by avoiding them. They knew they had a father. Elena never lied about that, but she gave them truth in manageable pieces. He made a terrible mistake, she would say when they were small enough to accept mystery. Did he not love us? Leo had asked once at 4 years old. Elena sat very still before answering. I think, she said carefully, he did not understand what he was losing until it was gone. That answer stayed with her for years. At 5, the children began asking sharper questions. What does he look like? Does he know about us? Why doesn't he come? Elena could not bear to poison them with adult bitterness. Nor could she bear to create a false hero out of a man who had abandoned them before they were born. So she said only this: some people find truth too late. And in private, after the twins had fallen asleep, she would stand at the kitchen sink with her hands in cold water and wonder whether Ethan ever thought of them. Then she would hate herself for wondering, because she had promised never to build her peace on a man who had broken her once. So she built it on work instead. She took over more of the bakery operations when Mara's health slowed her down. She managed orders, accounts, and eventually helped transform the neighboring bookstore into a little cafe corner where parents could drink tea while their children read. The town trusted her. Children ran to her. Old men nodded to her in the market. She became quietly woven into the place, and that was its own kind of healing. She was no longer the woman Ethan had humiliated in a ballroom. She was no longer the abandoned wife standing in the rain. She was Lila and Leo's mother, Mara's almost daughter. The woman at the bakery who remembered everyone's order and somehow always found time to kneel when a child cried. That identity took years to grow, and it was hard-earned. Which is why 6 years later, when Ethan walked into her bookstore cafe on a rainy autumn afternoon, it felt less like the past returning and more like an earthquake under a house she had built carefully by hand. The storm had rolled in after lunch. Tourists disappeared. Locals hurried indoors. The bookstore cafe smelled of cinnamon wet coats and coffee. Lila was sitting cross-legged on the floor near the front window, drawing waves in a sketchbook. Leo was standing beside a low shelf, sounding out the title of an adventure novel with intense concentration. Elena was in the back carrying a tray of tea from the kitchen when the front bell above the door rang. She stepped into the room and saw Ethan. For one impossible second, her body forgot how to move. He looked older. Of course he did. Time had sharpened some things and worn others down. There were lines at the corners of his eyes that had not been there before. His shoulders seemed broader but heavier. His face was still striking, still controlled, still unmistakably Ethan Vale. But it was a face that had learned solitude. Rain darkened the shoulders of his coat. He had likely entered only to escape the weather. Then he saw her, and everything stopped. The tray in Elena's hands trembled once before she steadied it and placed it carefully on the counter. Lila looked up first, then Leo. "Mom?" Leo asked. "Mom." The word broke the moment open. Ethan's gaze shifted from Elena to the children, to Lila's eyes, to Leo's mouth, back to Elena, again to the children. His face changed in a way she had never seen before. Not power, not anger, not even shock exactly. Recognition, followed by devastation. "They're mine," he said. It was not a question. Elena stood straighter and placed one protective hand on each child's shoulder. "Yes." He closed his eyes briefly as if something physical had struck him. Twins. Not one lost child in memory. 2 living children standing 3 yards away. 2 6-year-olds whose first words, first steps, first fevers, first birthdays, first nightmares, first everything had happened without him. The air in the cafe seemed too thin. Leo looked up at him. Who is he? Elena's throat tightened. There are moments a mother wants to delay forever, but some truths cannot be postponed once they have walked through the front door. She looked at her children and chose honesty. He is your father. Lila frowned. Our father? Ethan's jaw tightened painfully. Leo's voice came next, clear and simple and merciless in the way only children can be. Then where were you? No boardroom had ever injured Ethan the way that question did. He looked at the boy, his boy, and seemed to search for a shield. None existed. I was wrong, he said at last, and I found the truth too late. The twins did not understand all of that, but Elena did. She saw the answer in his face. He knew. He had learned what Vanessa had done. Maybe years ago, maybe recently. It changed nothing and everything all at once. Please leave, Elena said quietly. Ethan looked at her. Elena, please, just let me explain. You already chose your silence once, she said. I will not let my children pay for it again. Her voice was calm. That hurt him more than rage would have, because calm meant she had survived beyond needing his understanding. For a moment, he did not move. Then he looked at the twins again. I'm sorry, he said. Lila stepped slightly behind Elena. Leo stared openly, confused and wary. Ethan nodded once, as if accepting a sentence. Then he turned and walked back out into the rain. This time, Elena shook after the door closed. Mara, who had been quietly stacking trays in the back room, emerged without a word and took over the front counter while Elena crouched beside the twins. Are you okay? She asked them. Leo was the first to answer. He looked sad. Lila looked up at Elena's face and saw too much. Is he the one who hurt you? Children know more than adults admit. Elena stroked her daughter's hair. Yes, she said softly. A long time ago. Lila leaned into her. Leo frowned toward the door. Is he going to come back? Elena opened her mouth, then closed it, because somehow she already knew the answer. Yes, she said. And she was right. The next morning, Ethan was standing outside before sunrise. The storm had passed, leaving the streets washed clean and pale under morning light. He stood alone, with no driver, no bodyguard, no flowers, no expensive performance of regret. Just a man in a dark coat who looked like he had not slept. Alana saw him through the front glass before unlocking the shop. For a long moment, she considered walking away. Instead, she opened the door. He did not try to step in immediately. I need to speak with you, he said. She folded her arms. You had 6 years. I know. That is not an answer. No, he said quietly. It isn't. She studied him. There was no arrogance in his face now. No impatience. Only a sort of disciplined ruin. What do you want? She asked. The truth, he said. All of it, even if it leaves nothing of me. Elena almost laughed. Truth. He had thrown hers away publicly once before, yet now he stood here asking for it like water. She looked past him at the empty morning street, then back into the quiet shop. The children are still asleep upstairs, she said. You have 1 hour. He nodded and entered. They sat at a small wooden table near the back, where regulars usually drank tea by the bookshelf. No audience, no father, no Vanessa, no crowd hungry for scandal. Just 2 people and the wreckage between them. For a while, neither spoke. Then Elaine did what he had once refused to do for her. She gave him the truth from beginning to end. She told him about Vanessa's visit that night in the rain, about the threat wrapped in politeness, about leaving before dawn, about Seabrook, about Mara, about the first scan and the discovery of twins. When she said the word twins, he closed his eyes. She told him about the labor, the fear, Lila's breathing issues, Leo's feeding trouble, working through fever and grief, counting coins for winter heating, walking the floor with one baby against each shoulder because they refused to sleep unless they could hear her heartbeat. She told him about first birthdays, made from bakery scraps, borrowed candles, about the questions the children had begun asking, about what it cost to answer them without hatred. At last, Ethan asked, voice rough, "What did you tell them about me?" Elena looked at him for a long time. "That you made a terrible mistake." He nodded as if accepting a blade. "Did you ever hate me?" "Yes," she said. "For a long time." He swallowed. "And now?" She leaned back. "Now I no longer need hate to survive." Those words landed harder than any accusation. Because they told him she had healed without him. Then, Elena gave him one more truth he had not expected. "Your father found us once." Ethan looked up sharply. "What?" 3 years ago. He came to town. He stood across the street and watched the twins leave the bakery with Mara. Her expression did not soften. He never introduced himself. Ethan felt disbelief turn to grief. He knew? Yes. What did he do? He left, but a month later, a legal trust appeared in the children's names through a private firm, education, medical support, living security. She paused. He never apologized, but I think he knew exactly what had been done. Ethan turned his face away. Richard Vale had known, and, true to form, had chosen the clean practicality of money over the harder courage of confession. That knowledge hurt in its own separate way. "I can't undo any of this," Ethan said. "No," Elena replied. "You can't." "Then tell me what I can do." At that, Elena looked toward the ceiling, where above them the twins still slept. When she spoke again, her voice changed. Less history, more law. "You can earn the right to be near them," she said. "Slowly, honestly, under my rules. If you fail them once, even once, you lose us forever." Ethan did not hesitate. "Yes." She looked at him sharply, almost suspicious of how quickly he said it. He understood. 6 years ago, he had made a decision too fast and ruined everything. Now she expected him to respect slowness. "I mean it," he said, "whatever you ask." "Do not promise me your feelings," she replied. "Promise me your discipline." He met her gaze. "You have it." The hour ended then, and something far more difficult than forgiveness began. The twins did not welcome him. They tolerated him. There is a difference, and Ethan learned it quickly. The first afternoon he was allowed to visit, he arrived with 2 books. One about stars for Lila, one about ships for Leo. He nearly did not bring them, worried it might look like buying affection. In the end, Elena allowed them because they were books, not bribes. Leo accepted his with cautious curiosity. Lila accepted hers only after looking at Elena for permission. Ethan sat on the floor while they leafed through the pages. He had negotiated billion-dollar contracts with less tension than he felt sitting beside 2 quiet children and trying to appear harmless. Leo was first to ask hard questions. "Are you rich?" Ethan blinked. "Yes." "Why?" He almost smiled. "Because I work too much." Leo considered that deeply. "That sounds bad." "It is," Elena said from the kitchen doorway without looking up. Lila hid a brief smile. That became the rhythm of the early weeks. awkwardness, observation, questions like small knives. Why didn't you look for us? I did, I failed. Did you forget Mom? Never. Were you mean before? Yes. Are you mean now? I'm trying not to be. That one made Leo nod as if the answer were acceptable for now. Lila was harder to read. She watched Ethan the way Elena once had not, without trust. When he asked her about her drawings, she answered politely. When he complimented her, she looked uncomfortable. When he forgot that she hated loud, sudden noises and accidentally shut a cupboard too hard, she flinched and avoided him for a full day. That undid him. He apologized to her at child height, kneeling on the kitchen floor. I'm sorry, he said. I should have remembered. She studied him for a long time. Will you forget again? It was not a child's question, not really. Ethan answered honestly. Probably, sometimes, but I will keep trying to learn faster than I fail. Lila considered that, then gave a very small nod. It was the first piece of ground he earned. Leo, by contrast, was sunlight with suspicion attached. He wanted badly to know Ethan, and badly to punish him for not already being known. One day he asked, If you are our father, can you build things? Ethan, who owned construction companies but had never personally built anything more complicated than a bookshelf from instructions, said, I can try. So Leo dragged him into the back courtyard with a loose crate, scrap wood, and enormous confidence. They were attempting to build a toy ship shelf. 3 hours later, the thing leaned dangerously to one side. Ethan had hit his thumb twice with the hammer, and Leo had declared the attempt not terrible but still disappointing. Lila, sitting nearby with her sketchbook, quietly drew the entire process. When Ethan finally laughed at his own failure, both twins startled, then laughed too. Elena watched from the doorway and felt something dangerous stir inside her. Hope. She pushed it down immediately. Hope had cost her too much once before. Ethan kept coming. Not every hour, not every day at first. Elena was careful. Boundaries were strict. Sometimes he was allowed 1 hour in the evening, sometimes only half an hour after school. He never argued. That mattered. He learned routines. Lila liked warm milk before bed, but only if the mug was not full to the top. Leo hated socks with visible seams and would remove them instantly. Lila read when anxious. Leo talked when anxious. They both slept better during storms if the hallway light stayed on. Lila loved astronomy. Leo loved mechanical puzzles. Both children loved the sea and detested green beans. These things became sacred to Ethan because they were pieces of his children's world, and he had so few pieces. One night, Leo developed a fever. It started low and climbed fast. Elena called the clinic, then Mara, then quietly sent Ethan a message only because the children had been speaking of him all week, and she suspected Leo might ask for him. She did not expect him to arrive in 12 minutes carrying children's fever medicine, electrolyte drinks, and a doctor on speakerphone. He stood just inside the doorway while Leo lay flushed and restless on the sofa. Can I come closer? Ethan asked Elena, not the child. That mattered too. She nodded. Ethan knelt beside Leo and cooled his forehead with a cloth. Leo looked at him through fever-bright eyes. Did you drive fast? Yes. Good, Leo whispered, then fell asleep again. Ethan stayed until dawn in a chair by the window. When morning light came, Elena found him still awake, tie loosened, head bent, watching Leo breathe. She stood in the doorway for a long time, seeing two truths at once. He had failed them terribly. and he loved them terribly. Both were real. That was the cruelest part. Weeks passed into months. The town noticed. Of course it did. Small places always notice. At first, people only whispered that Elena had a visitor. Then they realized the visitor was not ordinary. Then they learned the surname. Then the stories grew in all directions at once. Some pitied Elena. Some admired her. Some distrusted Ethan on principle. Mara ignored them all and threatened anyone too curious with stale sourdough. But not all consequences came in the form of gossip. One afternoon, a woman Elena had never seen before lingered too long outside the bakery, pretending to check her phone while watching the children through the window. The next day, another unfamiliar man did the same from across the street. Ethan noticed immediately. He had spent too long in dangerous circles not to. He had quiet security personnel in town within the hour. Their investigation turned up something old and poisonous. Vanessa. Though removed from Ethan's company and entangled in financial crime, she had not completely disappeared. Through hired intermediaries, she had been asking questions about Seabrook, about Elena, about children of a certain age. Whether from obsession, spite, or fear that Ethan's restored ties might damage her remaining legal maneuvering, no one knew. But the result was clear. She knew where Elena was, which meant potentially others could know too. That evening, Ethan told Elena everything. They stood in the closed bakery kitchen after the twins had gone upstairs. "I'll increase protection," he said. "You mean around us?" Elena replied. "Yes." She went pale but did not panic. Years of survival had taught her the value of calm. "Do you think she'll come here herself?" "I don't know, but I won't let anything happen." Elena laughed once, low and tired. "You said that too late once already." The words struck clean. Ethan accepted them. "I know. That's why I'm telling you now, before anything happens, not after." For a long time she said nothing. Then she nodded. "All right, but the children are not to be frightened. No guards at the school gates, no obvious cars. Quiet protection only." "You have my word." Again he kept it. Security became invisible but firm, and for a while peace held. Then Vanessa came, in person. It happened on a cold afternoon in late November. The bakery was warm with sugar and spice. The twins were at the reading table doing homework. Mara was upstairs resting. Elena was boxing pastries for the evening orders when the front bell rang. She looked up. Vanessa stepped inside like a ghost dressed for court. Everything about her was expensive, controlled, deliberate. Her blonde hair was pinned back, her coat was dark wool. Her face was beautiful in the hard way that made people call cruelty strength, if it was wealthy enough. For one suspended second, no one moved. Then Ethan, who had arrived 10 minutes earlier with new library cards for the twins, rose slowly from his chair. Lila saw Elena's face and stood. Leo moved instinctively toward Ethan without understanding why. Vanessa noticed all of it, her smile sharpened. "Well," she said softly, "this is domestic." Elena's body remembered old fear, but 6 years had changed what fear could do inside her. It no longer made her small. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa glanced at the children. "So these are them." Ethan stepped forward. "You need to leave." Vanessa looked at him as if he were a disappointing actor in a play she had once directed. "I gave up too much for you to end up here," she said, "in a bakery, playing father." Ethan's voice dropped to ice. "Leave?" Vanessa laughed lightly, then turned to Elena. "You really made something of yourself. I'll admit I underestimated you." Lila moved closer to her mother. Leo stared openly. Vanessa's eyes lingered on them with disturbing calculation. "Shame," she said. "If all this peace turned out to be temporary." That was enough. Ethan took out his phone. "I was hoping you'd try something this stupid," he said. Vanessa's smile faltered. He continued. "Every contact, every intermediary, every investigator you hired after Elena was found is tied to an active obstruction case. You shouldn't have come yourself. This makes everything simpler." For the first time, real concern entered Vanessa's face. "You're bluffing." Ethan held her gaze. The front door opened behind her. 2 officers stepped in, followed by a woman in a legal suit carrying a folder. No scene, no shouting, just clean consequence. Vanessa turned, saw them, and understood. "You set me up." Ethan's expression did not change. "No," he said. "I waited for you to reveal what you already are." The officers approached. The charges included witness tampering, fraudulent evidence manufacturing, stalking, financial obstruction, and illegal surveillance related to prior corporate crimes. Her lawyer had kept many things delayed over the years, but not forever. Vanessa looked back at Elena. "How did you win?" she asked, and for the first time there was no elegance left in her voice, only bitterness. Elena met her gaze steadily. "I survived." That answer seemed to wound Vanessa more than the arrest. As they led her away, Leo whispered, "Was she the bad person?" Elena knelt beside him. "Yes." "Will she come back?" "No," Ethan said from behind them with a certainty that made the room still. And this time, Elena believed him. Winter settled fully after that. But now it was a different winter from the one in which Elena had arrived in Seabrook pregnant and alone. This winter had warmth, routine, noise, the sound of Leo running down the stairs too fast, the sound of Lila correcting him, the smell of bread and soup and pine from the little tree Mara insisted on decorating each year. Ethan rented a modest house on the edge of town instead of trying to insert himself into Elena's home. It surprised everyone, especially Elena. A man like him could have bought half the street without blinking. Instead, he chose to live within driving distance and earn the right to knock. He attended school events quietly, sitting in the back row unless the twins asked him to sit closer. He learned to make pancakes without burning them. Mostly. He learned how to braid Lila's hair badly enough that she stopped him halfway and taught him herself. He learned that Leo was brave in public and afraid of deep water he could not see through. He learned that bedtime stories mattered more when read slowly. He learned, most of all, that children do not care about power. They care about presence, repetition, who comes back, who remembers. And slowly, impossibly, the twins began to trust that he would come back. The first time Leo introduced Ethan to a friend as "my dad," Ethan had to excuse himself to the bakery storage room and stand there alone until he could breathe again. The first time Lila slipped her hand into his while crossing the street, he walked more carefully than he had ever walked into any negotiation in his life. These were small moments. They were also everything. Elena saw all of it, and she remained careful, because loving Ethan once had nearly destroyed her. She would not let tenderness turn into amnesia. Still, she could not deny the changes. He never pushed, never asked her to move, never spoke as though apology alone entitled him to restoration. When he made mistakes, he admitted them quickly. When she said no, he listened. Once, in early spring, He repaired the loose shelf in the bakery after closing. She found him standing on a chair with a screwdriver and the focused expression of a man performing open-heart surgery. "You know carpenters exist," she said. He glanced down. "So do billionaires. Yet here we are." A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. He froze, not at the words, at the sound, because he had not heard her laugh freely in years. Elena saw it happen and looked away. That too mattered. They were still fragile ground. But something was changing. Not the past, never that, something quieter. A future becoming possible without asking either of them to lie about what had happened. It was Lila, in the end, who forced the next truth into the light. She was nearly 7 by then, old enough for complexity and young enough to speak directly. One evening after dinner, while Leo was building a fort from sofa cushions and Mara was arguing with the evening news, Leela looked up from her drawing and asked, "Mom, do you still love Dad?" The room stopped. Leo turned instantly. Mara became very interested in the television volume. Ethan, who had been washing dishes in the kitchen because that was where Elena tolerated him best, went utterly still. Children do not understand the architecture of adult caution. They simply walk through walls with questions. Elena set down the dish towel in her hands. "That is not a simple question," she said. Lila nodded seriously. "I know, but it is still a question." Leo crawled out of the fort. "I also want to know." Elena looked at Ethan across the room. He did not rescue her from it. That, strangely, helped. She crouched to eye level with the twins. "Love," she said slowly, "does not disappear just because someone hurts you. But it changes. Sometimes it becomes grief, sometimes anger, sometimes memory, sometimes something new." Leo frowned. "That is confusing." "Yes," Elena admitted, "it is." Lila looked from her mother to her father. "Do you want us to be one family?" There it was. The real question beneath the first. Ethan came forward then, kneeling beside Elena but leaving a careful distance. "What I want," he said, "matters less than what your mother feels safe with." Leo made a face. "That sounds like an adult answer." "It is," Mara muttered from the sofa. Lila thought for a long moment, then nodded as if filing the answer away. "All right," she said. "But if you break her heart again, I won't like you." Ethan's expression did something painful and tender all at once. "That seems fair." Leo considered this, then added, "Me too." Ethan bowed his head solemnly. "Also fair." Later that night, after the twins were asleep and Mara had gone to bed, Elena found Ethan outside behind the bakery, sitting on the back steps with his coat draped beside him. The sea air was cool. She sat 2 steps above him. For a while, they listened to the distant waves. Then Ethan spoke. "I loved you badly," he said. Elena stared into the dark. "Yes." "I mistook possession for certainty, trust for something that would survive neglect, your goodness for something indestructible." He paused. "I know now that love without humility is just hunger wearing nicer clothes." She turned slightly, startled by the honesty of that. He did not look at her. "I don't expect you to give me back what I lost," he continued. "I only want the chance to spend the rest of my life being worthy of what remains." For a long time, Elena said nothing. Then she answered with the deepest truth she had. "I do not need you," she said quietly. At that, he finally looked up. "I know. And if there is ever a future with you, it will not be because I could not survive without you." Her voice stayed calm. "It will be because I chose it freely." Something like relief crossed his face. "Then that is the only kind I want." She studied him in the dim light. The old Ethan would have demanded certainty. The man beside her accepted conditional hope like a gift he had no right to touch too quickly. That difference changed everything. Spring came in full. Seabrook brightened with flowers in window boxes and fishing boats painted fresh for tourist season. The bakery expanded its seating. The bookstore cafe added outdoor tables. Mara complained continuously while secretly enjoying the crowds. Lila and Leo turned 7. Their birthday fell on a Saturday, and the whole town seemed to know. Mara baked the cake herself. A 2-layer vanilla thing with slightly lopsided icing and a level of love no bakery in the capital could have purchased. The schoolteacher came. The pharmacist came. 2 fishermen came despite claiming birthday parties were nonsense. Children from school filled the back garden with noise. Ethan hung paper lanterns badly. Elena fixed some and left others crooked. Perfection had never saved anyone. Presents did. Leo wore a paper crown and declared himself captain of the garden. Lila wore one too and corrected everyone's grammar. At one point, Ethan knelt in the dirt while the twins explained with full authority how to plant tomato seedlings in the small wooden box they had made together. Elena watched from the kitchen window, dish towel in hand. Mara came to stand beside her. "He loves them," the older woman said. Elena nodded. "Yes. And they love him." That answer took longer. "Yes," Elena said at last. Mara gave her a side glance. "And you?" Elena looked back outside, at Leo's bright excitement, at Lila's careful, serious joy, at Ethan laughing when Leo accidentally dumped too much water on his shoes. The sight ached in ways she could no longer call only pain. "I'm learning," she said. Mara smiled faintly. "Good. Learning is safer than pretending." That evening, after guests left and the twins fell asleep upstairs under their new blankets, Elena stepped into the back garden. Paper cups still sat on the table. Lanterns moved softly in the breeze. Ethan was stacking chairs. He looked up when he saw her. "It was a good day." "Yes," she said. He waited. That had also become one of his changes. He waited now. She held a small box in her hand. He frowned slightly. "What's that?" "Something I kept longer than I meant to." She offered it to him. He took it carefully and opened the lid. Inside lay her wedding ring, the one she had removed on the ballroom table 7 years earlier. He stared at it as if it might vanish. "I went back for it," Elena said. "A week after the divorce, the cleaners hadn't thrown it away yet." Ethan looked up, stunned. "Why?" "Not because I forgave you," she said. "Because I needed to remember who I became after surviving you." He closed the box slowly, fingers trembling. "Elena," she stepped closer. "I'm not giving you the past back," she said. "I can't, I won't." He nodded once, swallowing hard. "I know. But I'm telling you something important." Her voice softened, though it never lost clarity. "The future is no longer impossible." For one terrible, beautiful second, he looked as if he might break apart entirely. He did not reach for her. He did not speak too soon. He simply stood there holding the small box with both hands, as if reverence itself had become necessary. Then, from the open upstairs window, Leo's sleepy voice drifted out. "Mom, Dad, are you coming?" "Dad." Even now the word transformed the air around Ethan. Elena looked at him, and for the first time in all those years, there was no wall in her eyes. Not no caution, not no memory. Those remained, and always would. But beside them now lived something else. tenderness without blindness, hope without dependence, a new thing. She held out her hand. He looked at it like a man being offered life after drowning. Then he took it carefully, not tightly, not possessively, just enough. Together they walked toward the back door, up the narrow stairs, into the warm light spilling from the hallway where two children slept, and tomorrow waited. The next year passed not like a fairy tale, but like real healing, which is to say it was uneven. There were beautiful days and difficult ones. Some mornings Elena woke with peace. Others she woke remembering the ballroom so vividly that her chest went cold. Sometimes Ethan would say something ordinary, about a business trip, a delayed message, a woman from his past calling about legal matters. And Elena's body would tense before her mind had time to reason with it. Trust, once broken at the root, grows slowly. But Ethan did not resent the slowness. If anything, he treated it as proof that what they were rebuilding mattered enough not to rush. He reduced his time in the city, delegated more, sold one apartment he no longer used, transferred major operations to trusted executives. His old world, built on motion and control, slowly reorganized itself around what he now understood to be the center of his life. Not power, not image. People. Lila and Leo moved easily between homes by then. Not half-time, not court-ordered, simply naturally. Some evenings they slept above the bakery, some weekends at Ethan's house near the cliffs, where Leo kept a box of screws and wooden parts for important engineering. And Lila kept a telescope Ethan had found after months of research because she deserved one that could actually show her Saturn's rings. Elena did not move in. Not yet. That, too, was deliberate. She needed to know that choosing Ethan again would come from freedom, not momentum. And Ethan understood. One summer evening, they all drove to the high bluff outside town to watch the sunset. The twins ran ahead chasing gull shadows, while Elena and Ethan walked more slowly behind. The sea was all copper light. Leo shouted from the grass, "Look, we are faster than the sun." "Scientifically incorrect," Lila yelled after him. "Emotionally true," Leo answered. Ethan laughed. Elena shook her head. "He gets that from you." "Impossible. I was born dignified." She looked at him sideways. "No one who has ever tried to braid Lila's hair has the right to use the word dignified." He smiled, then grew quiet. After a few steps, he said, "I used to think winning was the same as keeping." Elena listened. "But everything worth having," he continued, "turns out to require care, not conquest." She looked toward the twins. "That lesson cost us a lot." "Yes," he said, "more than I can repay." She stopped walking. So did he. The wind moved her hair across her face, and he fought the old instinct to reach and tuck it back. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "You do not repay love by suffering forever." He held her gaze. "You repay it by becoming the kind of person who no longer destroys it." Something in him settled. Not because he was forgiven all at once, but because she had just given him a path that was not endless punishment. That mattered too. So he nodded. "I'm trying." "I know." And that, coming from Elena, was bigger than absolution. When autumn returned, it brought with it the anniversary of the night everything had broken. Elena never forgot the date. She never told anyone she remembered, but her body did. Her hands became colder. Her sleep grew lighter. Old dreams returned. This year, instead of hiding it, she told Ethan, it was the first major change. "I may not be easy this week," she said one evening while closing the bakery register. He did not ask why immediately. He waited. Then understanding came to his face. The anniversary. She nodded. He was silent for a long moment. What do you need from me? Not what should I do, not tell me how to fix it. What do you need? That difference nearly made her cry. Consistency, she said, and no grand gestures. You'll have both. He kept his word. He did not flood her with apologies or flowers or pressure. He simply showed up every day in the shape she could bear. Coffee before opening, school pickup when Leo forgot his scarf, a repaired step on the back porch, quiet company if she wanted it, distance if she didn't. On the actual night of the anniversary, after the twins were asleep, Elena walked down to the shore, alone. The moon was thin, the waves dark and patient. She stood there remembering rain on silk, papers, and shaking hands, the public humiliation, the loneliness, the car headlights, Vanessa's smile, the train station, the first night in the room over the bakery. Then she heard footsteps in the sand behind her. Ethan stopped several feet away. I brought tea, he said. She almost smiled. Of course you did. He held out the cup. Steam moved between them in the cold air. They stood side by side, facing the water. After a long silence, Elena spoke. For years, I thought that night erased me. Ethan said nothing. But it didn't, she continued. It changed me, hurt me, hardened me, but it did not erase me. He looked down into the dark tea in his own cup. No, he said quietly. It revealed how little I deserved you at the time. She turned to him. Maybe, but that isn't the whole truth anymore. He met her eyes. She took a breath. I'm not standing here with the man who humiliated me in that ballroom, she said. If I were, I wouldn't be here at all. The wind moved around them. He did not speak, perhaps afraid any answer might fracture the moment. So Elena stepped closer, not all the way, just enough. Then she placed one hand gently over his heart. He inhaled sharply. This man, she said softly, I'm still learning. It was not a confession, not exactly. It was something more mature than that. A recognition, a living trust in progress. And for Ethan, it was everything. The twins eventually demanded clarity in the practical, childlike way they demanded all things. One breakfast, Leo asked, mouthful of toast, So are you two getting married again or not? Mara nearly choked on her tea. Lila rolled her eyes. You cannot ask things like that while chewing. I just did, Leo replied. Elena closed her eyes briefly. Ethan, to his credit, did not laugh. That decision, he said carefully, belongs mostly to your mother. Leo frowned. Why mostly? Because, Lila said before either adult could answer, he is the one who messed it up. Mara made a choking sound that might have been laughter. Ethan bowed his head solemnly. Your sister is very intelligent. She is, Leo agreed, then looked at Elena. Well? Elena looked at her children, then at the man across the table from her, then at Mara, who was pretending not to be delighted by the whole scene. Finally, she said, If anything like that ever happens, it will be because we choose it for the right reasons, not because we are scared. Leo thought about that. Okay, he said, as long as I can wear a suit. Of course that's your condition, Elena muttered. Lila looked at Ethan. If you do marry Mom again, don't do it in a ballroom. The silence after that was profound. Then Ethan said very quietly, Never. Lila nodded once, satisfied. That conversation did not lead immediately to proposals or ceremonies. That was not their style anymore, but it changed the atmosphere. Possibility entered the house in a clearer shape. A month later, Ethan asked Elena to walk with him after closing. They went to the harbor. Fishing lights moved on dark water. He did not kneel. He did not take out a ring. Instead, he said, "I have no right to ask for permanence as if I didn't once break it, so I won't ask you to return to who we were." She looked at him, waiting. "I'm asking something different," he continued. "Would you build something new with me? Slowly, publicly, if and when you want. Not because the children need a picture, not because the town expects it, because you decide this life is one you want beside me." Elena stood very still. Then she smiled, not with innocence this time, but with full knowledge of cost. "Yes," she said. "But new means new." He exhaled as if he had been holding that breath for 7 years. "New," he agreed.